Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to this Techstrong Learning experience. My name is Cody, and I'd love to welcome you back to Techstrong Learning. We have an exciting marketing panel today, but before we get things rolling, I do just want to run through the platform with you so you know how to engage with us. But first off, I will mention that today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to share with your team or watch again at a later point in time, we will be sending you an email with a link to access the recording on demand. So importantly, if you would like to engage with our panel today, there are a couple of options for you to do so. The first option is the chat tab, which you'll find on the right side of the screen. You can feel free to use this chat tab with us right now by letting us know from where in the world you are tuning in. I know we've got 2 New Englanders, 2 Texans, and I'm not quite sure where Carlos is, but perhaps he'll let us know once we open up the floor. So if you want to send any specific questions, we do want you to send those into that Q&A tab, as that just helps us stay organized. So if you do have any questions, send them early and often into that Q&A tab, and we'll try to get to as many as we can today. So today's conversation is around marketing in the age of generative AI, and leading our discussion is our very own Matt Delman, Director of Marketing here at Techstrong Group. Matt, do you want to go ahead and introduce the rest of the panel?
Sure. Thank you, Cody, for that wonderful housekeeping discussion. With me today is Aileen Cosmano, Director of Demand Generation for Visotrust, Joseph Baringhouse, the Director of Demand Generation for Sunreach Security, and Carlos Escapa, the Global Business Development Manager for Data and AI ML Solutions from Amazon Web Services. Panelists, thank you for joining me today. And the whole concept, before we get into the questions here, is obviously generative AI tools are in the news, and really we're seeing a lot of changes in our roles, in our jobs, in our companies from these tools. So I wanted to bring together a group of marketing and technology leaders to really discuss kind of what this age of generative AI, what this means for technology marketing as a discipline and for our companies specifically. So with that said, I guess let's start off the discussion with let's see, given like kind of the different AI tools that have come up, where really would the biggest benefit be for generative AI? Panelists, whoever wants to start with answering that question.
What makes it better for us? I mean, honestly, I think it makes our lives easier just in general. It gives us a starting place. I think it depends on how you use it, but certainly a starting place for a lot of work. Tools are easier to use. Ideally, it's an easier use for all of us. Makes our lives easier.
I agree. I think, the value that I'm seeing right now and just hearing from other marketers is just being able to do more faster, especially for, small marketing teams with small budgets, being able to just produce more content and get it out quicker, with obviously not having a huge staff to make that happen.
I just heard do more with less. What a start. What a start to the webinar. Yeah.
Can I be coined for that quote?
I suppose. So Carlos, you're kind of the person on the business development side of things. What are you seeing in your work at AWS with kind of improvements in businesses with AI?
Well, it feels like we're entering an era of everything everywhere all the time, a little bit like the movie, right? Where customers are expecting to be engaged, basically, regardless of how they speak with their suppliers or their service providers. They expect omni-channel experiences. They expect to be recognized. They expect offers to be customized and tailored for them. And generative AI is a way to satisfy partly partly some of these much higher expectations that customers have. And for marketing professionals, as we pointed out, generative AI is a massive productivity tool. It really helps with writer's block. And this is something that we all experience, even when we have to write an email, right? And it's amazing just how quickly a little chatbot can actually get you going and actually save, these minutes that you have when you hesitate. Maybe you sit down to put together some creative content like a new email or some promotion or what have you. And immediately it's like words don't come to you and you repair to the teapot or your coffee maker and you waste a few minutes there, right? Just trying to compose yourself to get going. And then boom, those are minutes that you shave off your idle time. And because the generative AI can be so helpful at bringing you ideas. This is the one point, by the way, some people have heard about the term hallucination. Hallucination, people think that it is a bug in generative AI, and actually it is not. It is a feature. It is designed to be that way because humans actually are a little unpredictable, and this is actually what makes us kind of fun and interesting. And the chatbots actually become appealing, feel a little bit human because they have this random process inside as they decide what is the next word that they're going to use. And this is really, really useful for creative work, which is, after all, what marketing professionals do.
Yeah. So that actually brings up an interesting point. I mean, the hallucination aspect of AI, that's kind of been something that I've seen a little bit of people arguing almost against using the AI tools, but it's interesting that we're talking about that being a feature, that sort of unpredictability in there.
Depends on how you're using it, though, right? If you're using it for technical analysis, technical content, you don't want it to hallucinate. You want it to be accurate. Like we were talking about this a little bit before, but if you're using AI to write something specific about your product and has no experience on your product, it's probably going to your point, it's going to hallucinate something. It's going to make it up. That's where you somewhat need to be knowledgeable in the topic you're asking AI to write for you before you're using it. And that's where I think the misinformation can come in as well. If you're using it to write things or work for you and you have no experience in the topic yourself, that is very problematic.
Absolutely. That's absolutely kind of where you kind of switch into like editing mode instead of trying to come up with the right word to say next.
I think Carlos's example is great. It's how we use it on our team here at Sunry. It's how I use it personally. It's a starting place. I'm so bad at the blank piece of paper. I sit there for an hour trying to come up with like the introduction or something. You become an editor, which is so much easier than starting from scratch, or at least have a layout, a framework that you're following. It just makes it so much easier to start from something than to start from scratch.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw a funny meme. It was put out by like a designer on LinkedIn, and it was the way that the end user asked AI for something they wanted, like a graphic, and it spit out something completely unrelated to what they wanted. And it was basically saying, the pains of being a designer is clients ask for the moon and the stars. And then when they get the moon and the stars, they're like, oh, well, that's not what I asked for. So I actually think it's going to drive marketing teams as well to get more clear and narrow on what we're actually trying to accomplish, what the outcome of what we're doing, like what we actually want that to be. So it's going to train us a bit too.
Yeah, that's a great point on the prompts.
That is, yeah. So I guess kind of from here, I'd be curious, discussing this, which AI tools have you guys used so far in your work? Like, call out any particular ones that you're thinking of. Obviously I mentioned ChatGPT and Midjourney in the webinar abstract that everyone signed up for, but beyond that, where are we, like what sorts of tools have we looked at?
I can go. I think the obvious one is going to be ChatGPT. I don't think there's a marketer in the world that hasn't used it at least once. Maybe so, but at least somebody has. And even if they haven't, they probably have interacted with it through another tool and they just don't know that it's hosted by OpenAI. Bard, another one, Sorry, sorry, Carlos. But Bard's got one, and then a couple tools that I use as well has it baked in within itself. I'd say some of the chatbots, to Carlos's example, use AI as well, reading the page, responding to the individuals. Some of the tools that we use have them integrated. Those are the really strong ones. Our design team here uses Midjourney and even Photoshop's new generative fill. I don't know if anyone's played with that yet, but it's still in beta. But the use cases for the design team that we have is very quick mockups that just to get something on the page to show do you approve this layout? Do you approve this review? And our designer will take that and give us a kind of a mock. If you leave it with just a blank space, you don't really get the full effect of what it could be. But mocking up a quick product dashboard and just letting AI, to your point, hallucinate some, just give me something to put on the page. It's a starting place to scroll through and get approval to move on to that next step and spend more time on it.
Yeah. ChatGPT, definitely leveraging that for just give me ideas on how to make this email better, how to create this social caption. And a lot of existing tools like Grammarly, I've been using for years. They now have an AI component. HubSpot has an AI component for social captions. And then Deep AI for images, which images there's a lot of improvements to make there. Not all hands have 10 fingers, some have 20. And yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of existing marketing technology start to, evolve and add AI. I know Canva has it for photos and similar like what Photoshop's doing. So it's great to see the existing stack also innovating so that we're not adding more tools.
Yeah. Is that kind of what we expect at this point? Probably we're going to see like more of the classic MarTech stack adding more AI capabilities. I mean, that feels like with Adobe and HubSpot and all of these other marketing tools already adding the functionality in, it feels like that's the direction the market is going rather than adding new point solutions. Is that fair?
I think that's someone I'm kind of interested on the technical side of the house here from you, Carlos, as well. But I think a lot of the tools will follow the bigger companies. As the bigger companies invest money into AI, we'll see other smaller companies invest there as well. And the integrations become more capable. Other technologies will continue to adopt. So as OpenAI improves their integration, improves their technology, other companies are going to be more comfortable taking it on as well. I'm leaning towards Carlos though on this one. Dive deeper on the tech side.
Yeah, I mean the Matt's question is so broad that I was actually cogitating here that I could easily go with 50 examples of where AI is embedded in the things that I do on a daily basis. But some of them are more obvious than others. So I'll mention that I do have both Bard and ChatGPT open permanently in my browser. So I go to them for simple tasks. For image generation, for instance, I made a LinkedIn post yesterday, so I use a Stable Diffusion for that. But Midjourney and Adobe also has that. But the thing is, we probably don't notice, but AI technologies, and I'm using machine learning models, generally are embedded in just about everything that we do. For instance, I do a lot of work in different languages, so I go to a website called Lingue, Linguee, and that helps me a lot with translations, antonyms, synonyms, and rephrasing. That is all powered by deep learning models. I go to DeepL when I do translate bigger documents. I also use Google Translate, evidently. Then when you actually interact with just about any product at the moment, there is very likely some measure of machine learning embedded that you don't even notice anymore. And this goes for all the recommendation engines that we use in every aspect, in just about every provider that we have out there. And evidently also I get into the weeds, right? Because that's my subject. The areas that are super important are sentiment analysis. For instance, we did recently a project for a ministry in the UK, where we needed to detect vulnerability in citizen interactions. So this is not technically marketing, but it is related to marketing. But actually, we needed to find out if the citizen had a real need, a very important need, so that could be fast-tracked and immediately turned over to a case officer rather than going into a queue and prioritized later. So this is also something that we do using generative models.
Carlos, I want to ask a question. I know it's not in the plan, Matt, but Carlos, can you elaborate on machine learning versus AI? I feel like a lot of companies for years have been calling machine learning AI in their marketing work, and we have guilty of, not me specifically, but marketers have been guilty of saying, yeah, it's AI, and it's very different. It's machine learning. I don't know if a lot of people actually understand the difference between the two. Can you give the synopsis?
Well, AI doesn't really exist, right? There's no intelligence in artificial intelligence. It is basically a set of applications that leverage mathematical, statistical approaches to solve problems. And because this is why you have the effect of hallucinations and many other effects. AI is a non-deterministic field, and it is implemented with machine learning models. So think about machine learning as being a component of an artificial intelligence application, and artificial intelligence is a misnomer, unfortunately. But we're stuck with it.
I like it.
Yeah.
AI just sounds so much better than machine learning.
Right?
Come on, we're all marketers here.
Yeah, but this point is unrelated to the discussion today, but we're confusing the market. A lot of citizens are very confused about what it is that AI really is about.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to using the tools appropriately too, right? Like not speaking or not using AI or machine learning, whatever, to write your content if you're not an expert on the content already, or at least have a basic understanding, right? I think there's also a use that some people will use ChatGPT, Bard, whatever, to explain a topic to them as they're trying to learn. And it's an okay starting point if you're trying to find out a place to go next. But I would never trust it to be, my thesis paper, or what I'm going to then repurpose. It's a starting place. It's a very basic entry level research tool.
It's kind of like for people of a certain age, we were all taught that, Wikipedia is not a valid source.
It's a great reference.
Okay. So it's kind of, that's all I can think of, early 2000s, and like being in high school in the early 2000s, and people of like my age and of course a little bit older were all constantly told by the librarians, it's like, Wikipedia is not a valid academic source for your paper. So this sort of the large language models and the generative AI is kind of, it's the same sort of discussion that's happening right now, from my perspective, at least. Like that's kind of how I relate it in my head, whether I'm right or wrong. But anyway, so I actually, something that you brought up, Carlos, that I want to go a little bit deeper on, like you're interacting with machine learning and AI when you're doing translation, because you work in a lot of different languages. And localization is kind of one of the gold standards that everyone's holding up as like to localize marketing going into like new non-English markets. Could you potentially see your companies expanding beyond English language markets faster because we would have access to these models of like kind of machine, like broader artificial, like large language model, artificial intelligence, machine learning driven translation?
Yeah, no, for sure. We have become really good at doing this. As a matter of fact, now it is completely normal on day one of availability of a new product or services to be marketed in globally, actually, and available in 10 or 15 different languages, because we can automate the processes, the translation processes significantly. I need to add here that the quality of the translation varies from language to language. We create an impression that everything is fine in just about any language, but that is absolutely not the case. More or less, we have a lot of training data for English to German to French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, those Western European languages are really well covered, but the quality of the translation dips significantly when you get to Chinese and more with Japanese. And then after that, it just drops off a precipice. So you still need translators to verify the work. They have a lot less work to do for Western European languages and more work to do for East Asian languages.
Interesting. Switching gears a little bit, could you guys see that AI generated content for marketing, like blogs or social posts, this is a question from the audience, could be flagged or downgraded in some capacity in the future?
That's a great question. A member of our team here at Sunry is kind of testing similar scenarios where you use AI to create a blog, then you take it to another tool to then update that blog and add the blog again. So by the time it's done, it's like 4 or 5 times edited, and then you go in and do it yourself. I think that's going to be that concept is going to be very, very challenging for anyone, regardless of the search tool, to flag. And the caveat is, as I saw someone else ask this in the comments too, as we continue to use AI, it's also going to learn from us, depending on the data set. I don't think we have anything to be concerned about right this second, but I do think in the longer term, it will. And that goes back to using it not as a content creator, but as a content starting place, as an adapter, as an editor, as a knowledge base, not as I'm going to let it all do everything for me. Use it to make your work better and your life easier, but not to do the entire job, at least not right this second. Now, again, that could change in a year as well. It could at some point become the person that does all the writing because it now has a stronger knowledge base as well.
Yeah,
that's my response.
I completely agree with that. I think, you're going to want to add your tone and voice anyway with your brand to this stuff. It's even easier to just know and tell what's written by AI now and what's not. So yeah, I think bringing that human element in is always important in early stages of any new technology. So I think having a human in the middle of sending things out externally is always key.
I'd also say AI does a what's the phrase, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if you give the garbage into the prompt that you're giving, you're going to get a bad response back. Right. I've also, we talk about AI writing emails and doing email outbound or doing, there are tools that are doing that now. They've been around actually for a little while. They've gotten better. Same thing with the chat bots as well. Some of the responses that I've gotten from humans are terrible. Some of the emails I've gotten are terrible. So the AI that is writing some of these is actually better sometimes. It's our team here at Sunry will use it in brief moments as well to go and make their messages better. I understand this concept a little bit. Can you elaborate on it so that I can then go give a better response? Totally okay. To me, that's a great use for right now as we're still learning, I think, to trust, and even our teams don't fully trust as well. It's been around for a few months now.
Yeah, what I would volunteer here is that we should look at AI as an augmentation tool and not as a replacement tool. And this is why I see a lot of people in the press, even politicians and even enterprise leaders of enterprises around the world thinking that this is an automation tool, and this is just the wrong way to look at artificial intelligence. We call it a stochastic process, right? This randomness that exists, that is really because of the probabilistic nature of the mathematics behind it, means that there is imprecision. So let's understand it. If you have a deterministic process, then do not expect these models to work without human supervision. That would be wrong. We can discuss how this manifests itself, for instance, in the medical field, which is very interesting. However, in marketing, we don't have to worry about that quite so much, right? Marketing is about the law of numbers. You want to have a high return rate. You have to have high click-through rate and so on. So it's okay if you make imprecise output from a machine learning model. And if you present advertising to somebody for a product who doesn't need it, it's okay. That person is not likely to get offended. They will just basically ignore it and move forward. this level of imprecision is not possible if you are a radiologist, right? So this is what's important to understand, is the criticity or the criticality of the business process that you want to apply artificial intelligence for, and whether it improves it, and whether it needs to be supervised. This is the way to look at it. So this highly creative work that we do around marketing is very apt to be assisted by artificial intelligence, but in no way it can be automated.
You made a great point there too on the specificity of the role. I think even when we're writing as well, we were kind of talking about this when we were talking before too, but like AWS, Carlos, I'm gonna go the security route for a moment. If we're talking about just what is zero trust, and you ask ChatGPT or Bard to explain zero trust, it'd probably give you a decent example, a decent response of what a zero trust model might look like. Now, if you ask how my product can enable zero trust or my solution can enable zero trust, it's not going to give you a great response. I've tried just to see what it would do, and I think that's where we have to be specific when we're talking about ourselves, to not confuse the market before, like we were talking AI ML. We have to be careful not to confuse the market as well when we're talking about our product, that it's not just generic and bland because it was written by ChatGPT. We still have to be somewhat specialists in our space. And to me, that's the marketer's job to actually learn the space you're in as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And I think this is where we're going to see, I know it's part of the discussion, but marketing roles and teams evolve. And, everyone's worried that AI is coming for their jobs, but we just have to be adaptable and be open and think differently of, okay, that we're shifting, right? And how can we now it's augmenting our job. So how can we adapt and lean on our strengths and, tap into like even greater potential with AI augmenting.
That's actually a very good point, Aileen. Like, could you see hiring plans change or like staffing change basically with the addition of new AI tools? There's been a handful of stories already of like design departments or content marketers like losing their jobs because the company pivoted to using AI tools. Like, is that something that, given this environment of like tech layoffs hitting marketers, is that something that you guys feel like we could expect to see more of, or is it just more a hiring slowdown?
That's a great question. Aileen, I see you're off mute. Do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. To my point, I think with any new technology, we need to remain open-minded and adaptable. I think an example is assembly line workers, right, were replaced by machines, but in turn, engineering jobs and more technology-focused roles started to open up, and we started to see, greater demand for that. So it's all about, sharpening your skill set and also figuring out how to leverage, designers better to be more strategic, to provide more insight. There's only so far AI can take us with images and design. So, having the designer adding their touch with, what their strengths are is going to be very helpful here. And then I think we'll see new roles and job descriptions that we don't even know exist right now start to open, that will just come out of this, right? Like AI strategy for marketing, AI operations for marketing. And I think we'll see a bigger spike in data analysis and strategy roles for marketing as well.
Yeah.
I similarly agree. I think the specialist role is going to be harder to get into. So honestly, like from a market perspective, joining a company as a specialist is like normally your first step when you move into, tech or whatever space. You join as a specialist, you work your way up, whatever, right? I think that's going to be more challenging because the specialist role is usually the doer of things. And as technology becomes better, I no longer need a doer. I need somebody that can go, actually execute and has the knowledge of that product. I give an example of like paid media specialists and agency and stuff like that. At some point, the technology is just going to do it for me. I'm going to tell it what I want to do and it's going to go do that thing. I don't need somebody to actually be a hand on the keyboard anymore doing that action. So we need to somewhat move from a a doer role to a strategic role. And I see the paintbrush one. Haley, I saw you do that too. The paintbrush is a great reference. But in that scenario, the painter is the strategist, and you have the tool to actually do what you need it to do for you. I don't need somebody to go buy the paint for me anymore.
Well, I'm going to weigh in with a little different point of view here, and that is, I would say marketing professionals are underutilizing the data, corporate data that is available by customers by probably orders of magnitude. And we have normally got access to data that is highly structured regarding what transactions customers have made, and that it is easy to query and to pull out. When it comes to examining customer behavior, I don't think that anybody is utilizing any more than 1 in 1,000 bytes of data available, and that exists in companies. So all of these logs that denote the use of websites, of mobile applications, the omni-channel experience that we provide to customers, you have a lot of events happening there that are customer interactions with these applications. And then if you actually look at the communication exchange that happens with customers, particularly in call centers, most of that data goes unharvested and under-leveraged in marketing activity. Therefore, this marketing ops that has to be developed and really requires a complete rethink about the information available about customers. And the companies that can actually crack this actually differentiate themselves completely from the competitors. These are the companies that when a customer phones into a call center, they immediately say, "Hello, Carlos, are you calling about something that has happened," and that there's already some process that has ranked maybe a transaction or product use or something as potentially denoting customer dissatisfaction. And then immediately you get into a conversation that is relevant and contextually important to the customer, rather than this absolutely horrific enter your customer number or what is your pet's name and all of that bullshit that you have to go through. And we all go through this, right? Whether it is your mobile phone, your electricity, gas, healthcare provider, insurer, blah, blah, blah. Do we actually think about the number of minutes that we waste just identifying ourselves, let alone contextually explaining what it is that we want to do? So the companies that actually master the harvesting of customer data at large and actually having a very clear idea of why a customer needs an interaction, they are not only going to do much better than the competition, they're also going to drive the margin higher, because the price point, the sales representatives are going to even be counseled on what price point a customer is willing to pay for that extra level of service.
So,
couldn't agree more.
yes. So, question from the audience, and because 3 of the 4 of us are current or former cybersecurity marketers, this is going to be an interesting one. The legal, copyright, data privacy issues is a big thing. Yes, I know. You know where this is going already, Joseph. How can users kind of proactively select the most brand safe tools at this point, given all of the potential issues around inputting?
I think first and foremost, whatever you do, don't put any sensitive information into something like ChatGPT or Bard. Anything that's like company specific, company safe, contact information, any PII should never go on one of those tools. It is just a massive data set that you're giving information away to. So just like first and foremost, never do that. Especially in security, AWS. All of us, I think, deal with that on a regular basis. I don't know. I feel like that's a massive disclaimer just to start with.
Yeah, I think
I can. Oh,
sorry. I think my mic is a little delayed. I would start by even just, asking your security team for some ethical, best practices. And just like with any cloud or digital tool, like obviously don't download anything or, click on anything that you don't know is safe. So I think getting some ethical best practices from your IT and security team is really important if you're really going to start making AI part of your strategy. And then, maybe working with that team to vet some solutions that you can agree on together that obviously meet company policy.
Matt,
Now
maybe
I
I
want to hear
misunderstood the
Carlos.
question. Is it about
Sorry?
is it about privacy or is it about copyright?
So it's
Was the question about privacy or about copyright?
So it's really kind of the entire thing around like how do you protect your brand from like the risks of AI. So with AI being like large language models, I follow along on like the discussions on like fiction, on the fiction side of this as well. There's a lot of debates among novelists and fiction writers in which the Amazon Kindle store features strongly. Sorry about that. Different group, obviously, within Amazon. Concerned about like AI generated books. That essentially the conversation that I'm seeing a lot of authors are starting to call them essentially plagiarism machines. So there's like that risk as well. Obviously, this is a different sector than what we're talking about here, but it's kind of the concern of protecting yourself, like protecting your brand from like a privacy perspective, from running up against any copyright issues, really protecting your brand in general as you're using AI, as you're using these AI tools.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so there's two sides that I would like to comment on. So work that comes out of a generative tool is not copyrightable. Okay. And especially images are not copyrightable. I was just looking here, and I'll put it in the chat. This is a letter from U.S. Patent Office. That was basically a decision taken on somebody who wrote a comic book and wanted to copyright the images, and the images were generated by Midjourney, I think it was. So the U.S. Copyright Office came down very clearly saying, hey, if you don't own the methodology, if you cannot explain the methodology on how you derive your art, then it is not copyrightable. And by the way, this artist is appealing the decision and so on. This is for images, okay, specifically. For text, it is not really possible for the patent office to actually know if the text is being written by a human or by a machine, right? And therefore, for that, you will have to use other kinds of tools to find out if the work that you have created has potential copyright issues. And it's not that difficult to look that up and protect yourself. But as the amount of content that can be generated, it is now going exponential, right? It can be, almost everybody is using these kind of tools. If you have PII, as my colleagues informed everybody, basically don't use free tools because even payable tools. If you're using a web service and for whatever reason, that provider, even if they're very good and very ethical and everything, they make a mistake or they're cyber attacked, and that information gets out in the wild and it's traced back to you, you will bear responsibility for how that information is used. Therefore, in any process that has PII, you cannot allow it to leave the corporate bounds where you operate. And therefore, you have to be operating behind a firewall, and that will require infrastructure. You will need your IT department to deploy models inside of your secured environment, and then there, of course, you can operate with a PII and do your job just like any other application from that point of view.
Yeah, I'll add that I think companies that have integrated AI at this point into their technology have, for the most part, reputable companies have done it with good intentions and have done it ideally in a secure way, right? Like, it's not, if you're HubSpot, for example, right? Alien was talking about it a minute ago. They purposely built that into the tool. It's not a free tool. It's an add-on to a function that you already have. There are still some trusted sources, but to your point, ChatGPT, don't go throwing stuff on there. Like, just stay away. I think that extends to company secrets as well too, right? Like, if there's something that you're even remotely, I don't know if I should or not, hold back. On the copyright piece for text as well, that goes back to Carlos's point in the very beginning too. We're not using this to write content for us. You are using it as a starting place, an adaption piece. One of my favorite use cases is I write an email, I write a template, maybe AI helped me in the beginning, whatever. And then I ask it to rewrite it 4 times, or I ask it to rewrite the paragraph 3 times so I can help get different ideas. But I've done the initial work, or maybe adapted what I got from them originally, and then I'm running with it in 4 different variations. You're learning, let it adapt it from you, and you're the prompt, you're the data source, rather than it pulling from somewhere else. So to me, there's less copyright concerns in that scenario. And again, like, go talk with your legal team. Like, if you're really not sure and you're at a big company, go talk with your legal team.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
That's a good one too.
That is a good one.
Good thought.
Yes. Yeah, use a copyright checker tool. Absolutely. So you said something earlier, so kind of at this point, most marketers have probably tested out ChatGPT, or something similar. To that point, I think we've kind of covered this a little bit, but is there anything else that anyone would say for marketers who are just starting to use AI tools in their workflow? Or really, should I say anything else we want to mention?
Yeah, just go play with it. Like, start asking it questions and like testing it with things. Like, it's not, people are scared to use it. You don't be scared. Like, just go try it. I know a lot of colleagues that don't want to use it because they're afraid it's going to give you bad information. Like, don't use it for things you don't know about. Like, that is just step 1.
Right.
Get started. I mean, a couple of use cases that I think I started with, like, we would write outlines. I'd have it write an outline for a blog. We'd have it write outlines for an email, for a campaign. I'll write often. Those of us in demand gen have written campaign briefs and written, abstract copy. And I'll take that. I'll go to ChatGPT and say, okay, now give me 15 ad copy headlines for Google. That then becomes my ad copy headlines, or gives me some examples to go run Google ads on, or LinkedIn copy for. Gives you, again, a starting place, but it's adapting from what I've already done, from the work that I've already started. Explaining a topic in more detail. If you've already written part of it and you need it to elaborate on or add, context to it, ask it to run with it. Data analysis, I think, is a big one too. Carlos kind of talked about it within a customer's tool. I've used it for data analysis, not with PII, but data analysis of, here's all the pages that I've had visited my site. These are all the hits. Summarize them based on the most visited page at what point in time. I think we, to your point, underutilize it within our own content as well. There's simple use cases of, I have all these company names and I need to know the domain of them. Give me the website domain. I think a lot of us have used that concept before too. Just go try it. And if you're not sure, run with it.
Agreed. I think if you're not already dabbling with it, you're behind. So just start somewhere, right? It's actually fun. So, I mean, you could also start just in your personal life. I'm looking for something to do this weekend in Boston, Massachusetts, and then maybe start introducing it into work.
Oh man, don't underestimate the jokes.
Comment by
Jokes from ChatGPT and Bard, actually pretty solid. If you give it a good prompt, it will actually give you some pretty solid jokes and references back. Like, looking for an opener, for an email, for a concept, like, start there.
Yep. Agreed.
The comment by participant 221 is actually quite good and appropriate. What I would invite everybody is that consider that using chatbots in particular is an iterative process. is something that you basically want to refine, to hone. So you may have 4, 5, 10, 20 interactions until you get exactly something that you want, and you will still want to edit it afterwards. The second one, go into it with a childlike attitude. Forget you're an adult. Think like you're a child, and interact with it. Ask whys, or ask move this around, and why would you want to do this or do that? And what happens in these interactions is that the history is actually accumulated, and this is why the responses keep getting better and better. So the improvements actually kind of go exponential. And once you learn how to do it, or you get a feel for how to do it, then the number of interactions actually decreases. But the advice is from here in the chat from Mr. 220 or Ms. 221 are absolutely spot on. If you have a liking for coding, there is a really nice prompt engineering course that is very easy, it's very simple, if you know a little bit of Python, and you can take it in deeplearning.ai. And it's a really nice, easy course that you can use to start to do prompts that are a little more sophisticated, and also start to think about how you might want to automate some marketing tasks using prompt engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Start with your personal life too, I'd say, right? Like from the childlike behavior. I'm a golfer. I cook when I'm at home. I've had ChatGPT make me recipes, suggest things based on what I've told it I have going on for the week. A buddy of mine used it to give him his golf regimen. He's like, I have 30 minutes and I want to get through all of my irons. What should I do? And it gave him like, I need to do my 7 5 swings, my 6 4, and then I need to switch to my hybrid. Like it walks through a regimen for you for your personal life. Start there where you want to have fun with it, and then move to work where you're like, okay, I now understand how it works. To your point, Carlos, like the prompting piece is the most important. Just tell it like, that doesn't work, try again. And it will give you another response that's completely different. Start there. Start with your personal life. Have fun.
Agreed.
And don't over-index in ChatGPT, by the way. With this, Gen AI doesn't mean ChatGPT. ChatGPT basically got to a mass market first, but there is plenty of choices, and they're all equally good. Well, not equally. Sorry, I shouldn't say equally. They might all be good. I find myself, for instance, using Bard more often than ChatGPT for whatever reason. And turn off, by the way, something I recommend, go to the settings and turn off the, what is it called, the log. You can actually turn off the log.
It deletes
it's a little
it,
more secure when you do that.
Yeah.
The, man, what was that? There was a question that just came in that someone was answering. Oh, ChatGPT, the free or the paid version one. That's why I use Bard, because I think the data set is a little bit more current. I also think it's more creative. ChatGPT, I think is a little bit more technical in some scenarios, but Bard is more creative when I'm asking it responses or asking it to write things. I've gotten more creative responses when I give it the exact same prompt.
Cool. Okay. So one sort of tactical question that I wanted to pose, if there are any SEO or ranking issues with the AI generated content, like how, from a thought experiment perspective at this point, because we don't know what Google is doing with its search engine or what, how, from a quick 10-second, like advice perspective, would you tackle that?
I have not. Go ahead.
Sorry. Again, to the point of, AI shouldn't be writing your entire web pages. You can be leveraging AI to figure out what keywords you should be using, what your competitors are using. But, I wouldn't have your homepage written by AI. It should be assisting in the process. Because again, your product, what you're selling, what your website homepage should, the top pillars of content that it should have. So I would use it to do the research on the content, the keywords, the outline, augment the content creation, because to everything we talked about, wouldn't rely on it 100%.
That's how we use AI. I've never used it to write anything 100%. And so I'm a little bit less concerned about SEO rankings, but to be fair, I also haven't seen any major drop-ins from anything that has been written with AI's help. We don't do a ton of it anyway. So it's, to your point, like content creation is faster, sure, but it's also still needs to be validated.
Yeah, I know Google has come out themselves and said like they don't really judge whether it's AI written or not.
Right.
In terms of
Currently,
this should
today.
say currently today, and as we all know,
Well,
with the algorithm, they're going to change their minds in like 6 months. So,
yeah.
It's
also like why would they want to right now as well? To be fair, like they just came out with Bard not too long ago. Why would you want to say, don't use this thing for this, big use case that marketers are using it for? Yeah. Give them a few months to play with it, then we'll do it.
Absolutely. So we are coming up in the last 10 minutes. Kind of something that I want to talk about is, AI integrated into your technology. Is this something, I mean, given that we've heard talk about like machine learning models and like machine learning integration for years now, is it starting to be that more customers are expecting this to be included? And are you starting to see this being viewed as a differentiator in your products or in your spaces, I should say?
I almost want the AI security company in AWS to answer first. Oh, seriously, I think it's great.
I want to clarify. I'm not here representing anybody.
Yes,
other than me. Just to clarify. Yeah. I answered partly the question, Matt, because the expectations of consumers are definitely shifting, and the younger you are, basically, the higher the expectations become. And this is why this terrain called hyper-personalization has to be led by the marketing department, because it's really the only one that can actually take the leadership inside of the company. And most of the obstacles that people find is the fact that the data are typically owned by the application owners. Therefore, companies operate with silos, and the value that can be derived and the competitive position of a company improves if you can actually have a transversal view that allows somebody to have a holistic perspective on what each customer has. And if you have these scalable processes, this means that you may have a base of 100 million customers, but actually make them feel like individuals when they contact you by having the warm welcome, for instance. It's just incredible that this is such a hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
And this is something that I would invite those of you participating in this call to look at it as a way to drive value for your company, your organization. Just basically giving the point of interaction of a customer with whatever happens to be, whether it's a call agent or a website or a mobile application, that have that personal touch means the world to the customers. And it's not that difficult to do. Then the second point is that you definitely want to, if you want to build a lot of value for your company, is increase the percentage of time that the employees spend interacting with customers, which tends to be incredibly low, almost like eye-wateringly low. And giving then those people who interact with customers more contextual information. One point where we don't see enough yet, and I think that this is in the horizon, is coaching in real time the sales force on how to negotiate with customers in real time. Is this ability to pick up signs in the way that the customer is expressing themselves, whether they are frustrated or they have a need for something or they express that something is going wrong, and then very quickly be able to provide a sentence to the call agent that allows them to turn around a conversation from a negative sentiment to a positive sentiment. And then once you create that, that's a beautiful space for the upselling and the cross-selling.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what I would provide as recommendations and takeaways for our audience.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be the last question that we have time for. are, given marketers are already kind of constantly overloaded, especially in kind of the startup space, is this going to be, do you feel like there's going to be kind of an expectation of even more work getting done because we have these AI tools now?
Do more with less.
Do more,
But
do more with less.
yes, but I also feel like it's a fair expectation. I think it's fair. I think it's a fair expectation for us to do more with the tools that we have at hand, especially if you're spending money on it. Just to be clear, like if any of the tools you're using are paid, I would almost expect that you are having a higher return on it. If not, why am I paying for it? The caveat to that is like, your life has been made easier. The ability to do what you do made easier. We talked about earlier, it takes 2 hours to sometimes get the first sentence on an email. Use the tool to get you past that. Your time is now better spent doing something else. Do much more with more. I think the expectation is fair to some extent. You still also have to be able to communicate your bandwidth back to your managers, whoever that may be. When ChatGPT first came out, and every marketer in the world was being asked, write everything. I want 50 blogs tomorrow. It's like, no, that's a bad scenario. We still have to do this component to it. So like truthfully, that goes back to some of your management practices, some of your team components as well. Like have those conversations early on to set the expectations. Like, yes, we will use it. Yes, I can do more, but I'm not ready to, commit all into this because we haven't figured out how to best use it yet in this scenario.
Yeah. And also just the education to leadership of like how you plan and what the best practices are to leverage AI from a marketing perspective, and educating it on like that. The phase right now we're in is the research, inspiration, brainstorm phase. And that's how I'll be leveraging it, right? I'm not going to fire 3 of my team members and replace it with, ChatGPT. So level setting and, education to leadership is always important. We all know of those CEOs that hear of a new technology that come out and they're like, we need to be using that now, right? And so level setting is really important. Someone asked in the chat if AI will replace companies like demand-based.
I saw that.
Yeah, I think those companies are going to have to adapt, right? I think we're going to see a lot of AI. We were talking about this in the pre-show. I think we're going to see a lot of AI happen in the pre-sales process, in the marketing ops process, qualifying prospects, targeting better. Really, I mean, AI could be handling the whole pre-sales function, and just like we could be teaching AI on how to just only deliver us qualified companies and prospects that like we want to talk to, and just personalize the marketing function and marketing outreach way better. So I hope that they adapt, and that is the good that's going to come out of AI.
Awesome.
For us.
Yeah. For us, at least. Yeah. I mean, that's then like I got pitched by companies like Seamless AI, and like there's new tools in that space that are trying to leverage those technologies or integrating those technologies to kind of do what you said.
They should. They have massive data sets. To Carlos's point earlier, like 6 Sense and Demandbase and other companies like that have incredible databases and data
right
on who they're talking to. Like they should be incorporating. And to be honest, I think a lot of them already have been for the technology that they're using currently. They already have. It's very hard to do what they're doing without some sort of machine learning in place already.
Yeah, we have a lot of the data, right? Even in our CRMs and marketing automation tools, and being able to use that data better is going to be game changing. To Carlos's point, we have all of this data. Like we need to be using it to just deliver better experiences to our prospects and customers. So I'm looking forward to that. One thing I wanted to mention on the AI security point. AI is a huge buzzword in the cybersecurity world right now, machine learning. Everyone's saying they're doing it. And I think it's important to really be educated from your product and engineering team on how your product is leveraging AI, right? And being able to tell that story effectively and educate. A lot of education is needed. So everyone wants to say that they do AI, but how are you using AI to make a security department's life easier. And for Viso Trust, my company, there's still a human element involved. So at first, some sentiment from the market, especially practitioners, was, oh, you're coming after my job. No, we're actually not coming after your job. We're coming to augment your job and help you shine as a security practitioner and elevate yourself. So that's a lot of the education we're doing. And had I not gotten, that education and story from our product team and our engineering team, it would have been a lot harder to navigate some of those questions and conversations we were getting in the sales process, and also in speaking presentations we were doing.
If you're a marketing leader, you should be best friends with your SE team, your product team. You should have an understanding of how these things work. And if you don't, you're just going to be adding to the noise and not actually helping your prospect figure out what they want to do.
Absolutely. All right. We are at time. So I would just like to close out by thanking my panelists. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Aileen. Thank you, Carlos, for joining today. And thank you, everyone who asked questions and engaged in the chat. This was fantastic. I'm probably stealing Cody's thunder for the closing remarks, but I'm going to do that anyway. This recording will be made available afterward to everyone who signed up and everyone who didn't join, who wasn't able to attend. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.
Bye.